Now let's take a tour of world news in a segment we like to call Meanwhile In. Meanwhile, in that bowl of pasta, Donald Trump has been declared the new God Emperor of mankind. This one goes out to all the Warhammer 40K fans, but let's take a look at this video of a gigantic statue of Donald Trump in the garb of effectively a sci-fi psychic eternal ruler with a Twitter sword, by the way, and you see a bunch of people, I think they're Space Marines, marching in front of him in Italy. So what is the purpose of that awesome statue that I hope is never taken down? Fabrizio Galli, who created the float, said in an interview that the sword he's wielding contains the phrase meaning, "Here's your effing tariffs." So in the same way that the actual God Emperor of mankind has an invincible army of eternal Space Marines with which to conquer the Xeno hordes, he has Twitter that he uses to impose his will on the world. And Galli goes on to say, it's a joke, but in fact, he's trying to destroy nations with the economy instead of nuclear missiles. This is one of the strongest actions, let's say, that powerful people like Trump can use. I did not think that I would ever be talking about tabletop war games on this show, but I'm glad to. And I'm also glad that artists like Fabrizio Galli are using pop culture to draw attention to the way that Donald Trump exerts his will around the world and some of the negative international consequences of it. Meanwhile, in Japan, the Olympic and Paralympic medals for the 2020 Olympics are going to be made out of recycled waste, which is an awesome move, I think. A project was started back in 2017 to collect enough electronic waste, including old smartphones and laptops, to implement the scheme. The aim was to collect more than 30 kilograms of gold, 4,100 kilograms of silver, and 2,700 kilograms of bronze, which is a reminder to me of exactly how many medals they end up giving out at these things. It is actually a gigantic task to try to do that, but they've been quite successful so far. The target for bronze was met last June, while the organizers had more than 90% of the gold and 85% of the silver by October. The recycled metal has been collected from the Japanese public, as well as businesses and industry. And it serves as a reminder, not just that there are gonna be some awesome Olympics coming up in just a couple of years, but that we have an incredible amount of waste, and the waste is not necessarily 100% waste. There are things, especially in our electronics, that we do kind of need and could theoretically run out of. And so really stringent, advanced recycling programs can be very beneficial, not just in terms of reducing the sheer quantity of waste collecting in landfills, but in helping to achieve goals, whether artistic or sports or technological or otherwise. Meanwhile, in Russia, a state of emergency has been declared due to an invasion of bears, which is news not just for Earth, but also for my worst nightmares. Yes, the aggressive bears have entered homes and public buildings in the remote Novaya Zemlya, there's no chance I pronounced that correctly, archipelago, home to around 3,000 people, where officials have warned of a mass invasion. We are talking about dozens and dozens of bears. And let me remind you, this is a species where one in your town is kind of a big deal. And so when they start coming in squads and platoons, I start to get worried for the people. Let's put up a couple photos. They've seen them inside of buildings. And you can see there, it's a little bit hard because it's low res, but that one is smiling. You know why he's smiling? Because he's gonna get to kill people soon. If we go back to the first one, take a look at his dead eyes. Look at the sheer evil reflected in that polar bear's eyes. No, of course, polar bears are a beautiful species that have been victimized not just by human-caused climate change, which is one of the reasons why in cases like this, they're forced to flee into new areas to find food, but they've been hunted down historically in huge numbers, shot by tourists that are in areas that they should have never been. They suffer from a number of different problems, and now they're a problem for us. So, if you were not concerned about climate change for the many reasons we've previously listed on this show, how about an army of polar bears? Does that get you thinking about a Green New Deal? Meanwhile, hold off on the UK. I gotta give Craig credit. It's a Baravan and it's coming. But meanwhile in the UK, actual progress is being made on emissions reductions. Good news on the climate change. We never get to do that here at TDR. The finalized official statistics from the UK show that Britain's greenhouse gas emissions in 2017 were 2.7% lower than the year prior and 42.1% lower than back in 1990. Coal use for electricity fell 27% to a record low following the closure of 2 major plants. Hold that in your mind for 1 second. Additionally, the UK has a target of cutting CO2 emissions 80% by the middle of the century. Ministers are on track to meet their short-term goals, but the Advisory Committee on Climate Change says they are still short of policies to achieve long-term targets. Well, hopefully some of the new dynamic members of Congress here in the US can give them a few ideas on how they might do that. But I do want to give them credit. Coal use for electricity fell. Why? It's not shocking. It's because they shut down some of the coal plants and replaced it with other electricity generation. So while the UK is doing that, here in the US, Donald Trump is advocating for, I believe it's in Tennessee, to not shut down coal plants they're considering shutting down. And did you know that the people that manage those coal plants have given money to Donald Trump in his re-election efforts? Shocking news, I know. So there's an idea of we can move in the right direction, or we can be beholden to the corrupting influence of money in politics, generalized political corruption, and all of that. Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.